The space station of Xylaris Prime floated silently in the darkness of space, shining like a city made of silver stars. Inside its walls, thousands of aliens lived in luxury, and among them worked a single human janitor named Ethan Cole. Every day, Ethan swept long halls, cleaned metal floors, and fixed broken lights. No one noticed him. To the aliens, he was invisible, just another human doing a low job. But Ethan had a secret. He wasn't always just a janitor. On Earth long ago, he had been a teacher, a good one. He had taught children how to read, how to dream, and how to believe in themselves. But after the wars between humans and aliens destroyed his home and took his wife, Ethan had nowhere left to go. Now all he wanted was to survive and send credits to support his little son living on the human colony below. One evening, while cleaning near the royal gardens, Ethan heard a small voice struggling with words. It came from behind the glass wall of a glowing classroom. Curious, he peeked inside. There sat a young alien girl, silver hair, bright violet eyes, and a small crown that shimmered like the moon. She was the princess of Xylaris, daughter of the great alien queen. The girl looked frustrated, trying to read from a human book. Elephant, she whispered, frowning. Ethan smiled quietly. She was learning English. But the tutor beside her, an alien scholar, looked bored. This language is pointless, the tutor muttered and walked away. The girl sighed, almost in tears. Ethan's heart softened. Against his better judgment, he gently knocked on the glass door. The princess looked up, surprised. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm just a janitor," Ethan said softly. "But I can help you with that word if you want." Her eyes widened. "You know human English?" He nodded. "I used to teach it." There was silence for a moment. Then the princess smiled shyly and held out the book. "Then teach me, human." From that night onward, their secret lessons began. After everyone left the hall, Ethan would sneak into the small garden near the royal study. The stars above the glass dome twinkled as the princess waited with her book in hand. She called him Mr. Ethan, and he taught her simple words: sky, heart, dream, family. She learned fast, and she loved it. Sometimes she asked about Earth. Ethan told her stories of rain, oceans, and the laughter of children. Her eyes sparkled with wonder. "Do humans really smile every day?" she asked once. "Not always," Ethan said sadly. "But we try, even when life is hard." She nodded slowly, as if understanding something deeper than words. As days turned into weeks, their friendship grew. The princess began to laugh more. She even painted her mother's symbol with English letters. "For peace," she said proudly. Ethan smiled, but deep down he knew the danger. If the queen ever found out that a lowly human was secretly teaching her royal daughter, it would mean punishment. Maybe worse. Yet every night he returned. Not for himself, but because he saw a spark of hope in that little girl. Hope that maybe, someday humans and aliens could learn together. One night, while teaching her the word freedom, Ethan noticed movement in the shadows. His heart raced. Someone was watching. He quickly closed the book. "Princess, we must stop for tonight," he whispered. But before they could leave, a guard's voice echoed through the corridor. "Who's there?" Ethan hid behind a pillar while the princess pretended to admire the stars. The guard looked around but saw nothing. When he left, Ethan let out a deep breath. The princess turned to him with a mischievous smile. "That was close, Mr. Ethan." He nodded, half smiling, half scared. "Yes, princess. But maybe next time we should be more careful." She giggled. "Next time you'll teach me the word brave." And in that moment, as her laughter echoed under the starlit dome, Ethan realized something. Maybe these lessons weren't just about words. Maybe they were about courage, and about changing a galaxy that had forgotten what kindness meant. But in the shadows above, unseen by both of them, a pair of glowing eyes watched, cold, sharp, and full of suspicion. The queen was beginning to notice something strange. The days after that night passed quietly, too quietly. Ethan kept his head down during his shifts, pretending to be just another human worker on the queen's great station. But in his heart, something had changed. Every time he wiped the metal floors, he remembered the little princess's laughter echoing under the starlit dome. Each evening, when the corridors emptied and the alien lights dimmed to blue, he would sneak back to the garden. There, under the glowing trees, The young princess waited with her English book clutched close to her chest. She was not just a student now, she was his friend. "Good evening, Mr. Ethan," she said one night, her small voice bright against the hum of alien drones. "Good evening, Princess Arya," he replied with a bow. "Ready for today's lesson?" She nodded eagerly. "Teach me something new." "A big word," Ethan smiled. "All right. Today's word is kindness." Arya repeated it slowly, her accent soft and musical. "Kindness," he explained. "It means doing something good for others even when you get nothing back." She frowned thoughtfully. "My mother says kindness is weakness." Ethan paused, then shook his head. "Maybe sometimes people are afraid of kindness because it's powerful in a quiet way." Arya's violet eyes shone. "Then, I want to be powerful like that." For the first time since his wife's death, Ethan felt warmth return to his chest. Each word he taught seemed to build a bridge between two distant worlds, the heart of a human and the soul of an alien child. As the weeks passed, Arya grew braver. She began to speak English phrases to her guards, confusing them and making Ethan laugh silently. She even drew a small picture in her notebook, a stick figure human standing beside a crown. Beneath it, she wrote the words, "Friend forever." But the walls of the royal palace had ears. Servants began whispering that the young princess was acting strangely human. A few claimed to have seen the janitor lingering near her chambers. One evening, as Ethan finished polishing the marble floor near the throne room, two alien attendants glared at him. "Human," one hissed. "The queen has noticed your late shifts. You are watched now." Ethan's heart pounded. He forced a polite nod, trying to look calm. But when he returned to the garden that night, Arya wasn't there. He waited under the silver leaves for an hour. 2. Finally she appeared, running, breathless. "Mr. Ethan." "I couldn't come sooner. Mother was asking questions." He knelt beside her. "You shouldn't risk this anymore, Princess. If she finds out, I don't care," she said, her voice trembling. "You are my teacher. You treat me like a real person, not just a royal heir." Her small hands gripped his sleeve. "Do you think humans and my people could ever be friends?" Ethan looked up at the stars beyond the dome. "Maybe not today, but someday when people like you lead, it could happen." That night their lesson was shorter. They talked about words like trust and hope. Arya wrote them down carefully, her glowing eyes filled with determination. But as they left, neither noticed the faint red blink of a surveillance drone hidden among the branches. The next morning, tension filled the station. Guards marched faster, servants whispered louder. Ethan tried to stay invisible, yet he felt the weight of unseen eyes following him everywhere. During lunch, another human worker, an old friend named Sam, pulled him aside. "Ethan, something's wrong. The Queen's advisors are hunting for a traitor talking to her daughter." "They think it's a spy," Ethan froze. "A spy, you mean me?" Sam nodded grimly. "If they connect you, you'll disappear like the others." That night, Ethan didn't go to the garden. He worked late, cleaning corridors until his arms ached. But when he finally headed home, a small voice whispered from the shadows, "Mr. Ethan." It was Arya, holding a glowing pendant shaped like a star. "You forgot your lesson," he smiled weakly. "Princess, it's dangerous now." "Your mother?" "She doesn't understand yet," Arya said softly. "But she will. I'll show her humans are not monsters." She pressed the pendant into his hand. "For you. So you never forget your student." Before he could reply, footsteps echoed down the hall. "Guards, go!" he whispered. Arya darted away just as the soldiers turned the corner. Ethan hid behind a maintenance panel, clutching the pendant tight. The guard stopped near the garden gate. "The Queen commands extra patrols," one said. "The human scent was found here." As they left, Ethan exhaled shakily. He knew one thing. Their secret was no longer safe. The bond between a human janitor and an alien princess had become more than friendship. It had become a spark. And somewhere deep within the palace, that spark had already caught the attention of the Queen herself. Her next move would decide both their fates. The palace of Xylaris Prime had never been so silent. The air itself felt heavy with suspicion. Whispers moved through the golden halls like shadows. Whispers about a human who dared to cross royal boundaries. For 3 nights, Ethan avoided the garden. He worked longer hours, pretending everything was normal. But deep down, he knew the truth. The Queen had begun to notice. Her name was Queen Seraphina of Xylaris, ruler of 12 star systems, feared by many and obeyed by all. Her eyes glowed like molten gold and her voice could silence a battlefield. For years she had seen humans as weak creatures, slaves who survived only because her empire allowed them to. But something unusual was happening to her daughter, Princess Aria. The young princess had begun to smile more. She spoke strange human words during royal dinners. She even tried to bow like humans do. The queen had watched her with confusion. "Where is she learning this nonsense?" she demanded one evening. Her advisor bowed low. "Your Majesty, it is said, a human janitor has been seen near her chambers." A silence fell. The queen's golden eyes narrowed. "A human? Teaching my child?" That night she decided to see the truth herself. It was past midnight when Ethan crept toward the royal garden again. He had tried to stay away, but something inside him couldn't. He had promised Arya another lesson, this time about courage. The garden shimmered under the artificial stars. The soft hum of alien birds filled the air. There, beside a glowing pond, stood Princess Arya holding her small book. "You came," she said, smiling. "I shouldn't have," Ethan whispered. "It's dangerous now." She shook her head. "Learning is never dangerous." He sighed, sitting beside her on the marble bench. "All right, brave one. Let's begin." Ethan drew a small line in the dirt with his finger. "This," he said, "is a border. It separates two worlds. But courage is when you decide to cross it for something good." Arya looked at him thoughtfully. "Like you crossed it for me." He smiled. "Maybe." She giggled, trying to say the word maybe with a human accent. For a moment it felt like peace. Just a teacher and a student, nothing more. But behind the shimmering trees hidden in the dark, the queen watched. Her tall figure stood still, covered in a royal cloak that shimmered like liquid gold. Her expression was unreadable. Shock, anger, disbelief all at once. Her daughter, the heir of an empire, was sitting with a human janitor, laughing like a child. The queen's heart pounded. "Guards," she whispered, her voice cold as space. "Surround the garden now." The air filled with the sound of armored footsteps. Ethan froze as glowing weapons pointed toward him. Arya jumped up, frightened. "Mother, wait!" she cried. The queen stepped forward from the shadows. Her presence alone made the ground tremble. "So it's true," she said softly. "My daughter, taught by a servant of Earth." Ethan quickly knelt. "Your Majesty, please, it's not what it looks like." Silence. Her voice thundered. "You dare speak to me?" Arya ran to her side. "Mother, he's not a spy. He's my teacher. He taught me to read and to understand humans." The queen stared at her daughter, speechless. "You understand humans?" she whispered almost to herself. "Yes," Arya said, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "He taught me words like kindness, hope, and courage. He made me see that humans are not weak, they are strong in their hearts." The guards looked at one another nervously. The queen's gaze turned to Ethan, who still knelt with his head down. "Why did you do this, human?" she asked. "What did you hope to gain?" Ethan raised his eyes slowly. "Nothing, my queen. I just wanted her to learn something no one ever taught me, understanding between our worlds." For a moment, no one moved. The queen's eyes softened for a single heartbeat, then hardened again. "Take him to the holding cells," she ordered coldly. "Mother, no," Arya screamed, grabbing her arm. "Please, he did nothing wrong." The queen turned away. "Enough, Arya, you are my daughter. You will forget this human." As the guards dragged Ethan away, Arya's cries echoed through the crystal garden. He looked back once, giving her a faint smile. "Be brave," he whispered. The queen stood there long after he was gone, her heart heavy with something she hadn't felt in years. Doubt. Why had that human's words sounded so sincere? Why did her daughter's tears burn her heart like fire? When she finally turned away, the stars above the garden seemed dimmer, as if even the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what the alien queen would do next. The cold cell smelled of metal and silence. Ethan sat alone on the hard floor, his hands chained, his heart heavy. It had been 2 long days since the queen's guards dragged him away from the royal garden. 2 days since he'd last seen Princess Arya's terrified face. He kept replaying that moment, her tiny hands reaching out, her voice crying, "Don't hurt him, mother." It echoed in his head, louder than the humming energy walls around him. Outside the cell, the great alien Queen Seraphina walked through her palace, her long cloak trailing behind her like liquid gold. Her mind was restless. She had punished humans before without thought, rebels, thieves, smugglers. But this one felt different. Every word that human had spoken kept returning to her mind. I wanted her to learn understanding between our worlds. She had seen his eyes, not defiant. Not afraid, just honest, and honesty was rare in her empire. That evening, Seraphina dismissed her guards and went down to the detention floor herself. The soldiers bowed low as she entered. "Leave us," she commanded. The cell door opened with a hiss. Ethan stood quickly, eyes wary but calm. "Your Majesty," he said softly. The Queen's golden eyes watched him in silence. "You are brave, human," she said at last. "Or foolish. I haven't decided yet." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe both." Her expression did not change. "You defied my laws. You approached my daughter without permission. Why?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Because your daughter was lonely. She wanted to learn. I couldn't ignore that." "Lonely?" Seraphina repeated, her voice sharp. "She is heir to the most powerful throne in the galaxy." Ethan shook his head. "Power doesn't stop loneliness, Your Majesty. Sometimes it causes it." For the first time in years, the Queen had no answer. She stared at him, this frail, unarmed human, and saw no fear, no lies, just quiet strength. "Do you expect me to believe you taught her only words?" she asked coldly. "No," Ethan said. "I taught her ideas. About kindness, hope, courage, about seeing others as more than what we're told to see." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And what did she teach you?" He smiled sadly. "That even in the coldest place in the galaxy, warmth can still be found." The Queen looked away. For a long time she said nothing. Then she turned and left without another word. Later that night, in her private chamber, Queen Seraphina sat alone. The Empire's map floated in holographic light before her. 12 star systems under her control, millions of subjects who obeyed her commands. Yet for the first time she felt uncertain. Her daughter's laughter echoed in her memory. Arya's drawings of humans, her words about kindness and bravery. Could this human have changed her so much? She whispered to herself. Her advisor entered quietly. "Majesty, the human awaits your judgment. Shall I prepare the execution orders?" She stared at him, then slowly shook her head. "No, not yet," the advisor frowned. "But, Your Grace, this could be seen as weakness." "Enough," she snapped. "Leave me." The next morning, the Queen summoned Ethan again. He was brought to the throne room, his hands still bound. The entire royal court watched in silence. "Human," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You claim to have no hidden motives. Prove it." Ethan bowed his head. "How? Teach me," she said simply. "Teach me this kindness you speak of." The court gasped. Even Ethan stared, unsure if he had heard her right. "You want me to teach you?" The Queen nodded slightly. "If it is truly as powerful as you believe, then show me." Ethan hesitated. "Kindness can't be taught with words, Your Majesty. It must be shown." "Then show me," she said. "And if I find your lesson false, you will not leave this palace alive." The guard stepped back. Ethan slowly approached the steps of the throne. He looked around the grand hall, then quietly placed the glowing star-shaped pendant, the one Arya had given him, at her feet. "This," he said, "was a gift from your daughter. She gave it not because she had to, but because she cared. That's kindness, doing something for someone who can never repay you." The Queen stared at the tiny pendant glowing softly against the marble. Something inside her cracked, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel since her husband's death many cycles ago. For the first time in decades, the mighty Queen felt human. She stood, her voice trembling slightly. "Take him back to his quarters," she said. "But not the cell, a guest room." The guards exchanged shocked looks but obeyed. As Ethan was led away, he turned once to look at her. "Thank you, Your Majesty." She said nothing, but her eyes for a moment held something almost like respect. When the hall was empty again, Queen Seraphina whispered to herself, "Perhaps kindness is not weakness after all." Outside, the alien sun rose slowly over Xylaris Prime, and for the first time, its light felt warm. The golden sun of Xylaris Prime rose slowly over the alien city, casting long shadows across the royal palace. For the first time in many years, the morning air inside the Queen's chambers did not feel cold. Ethan awoke in a soft bed, not a cell. The chains were gone. The guards outside his door still watched him with suspicion, but at least they didn't aim their weapons anymore. He couldn't believe it. The alien queen had spared his life. A few hours later, the door slid open. A royal messenger, tall and silver-skinned, bowed stiffly. "The Queen requests your presence in the Grand Hall. She has a task for you." Ethan's heart pounded as he followed the messenger through the glowing corridors. The alien courtiers whispered as he passed, a human walking beside the royal guards. Some hissed in disgust. Others watched in secret curiosity. When he entered the Grand Hall, the Queen sat upon her throne, tall and radiant. The entire court was gathered. Ministers, generals, scholars. Even Princess Arya sat quietly beside her mother, her eyes full of hope. "Ethan of Earth," Queen Seraphina declared, her voice echoing through the marble walls. "You claim that your human ideas and kindness, courage and compassion are strengths, not weaknesses. My advisors say these are illusions. I want proof." Ethan stood straight, calm despite the hundreds of alien eyes on him. "How can I prove it, Your Majesty?" The Queen leaned forward slightly. "By teaching my council. For one cycle, you will instruct them in your human ways. If your lessons hold value, I will reconsider how humans are treated in this empire. But if you fail," her voice grew cold, "you will never see another sunrise." A murmur filled the hall. Some laughed openly, a human teacher for the royal court. Absurd, but Ethan simply bowed. "I accept, my queen." The following day, the lessons began. In the circular hall of knowledge, a dozen alien nobles sat around Ethan. Their faces were proud, their voices sharp. Ethan stood before them, holding only a small tablet and a heart full of hope. "Today," he began, "I will teach you a word. Empathy. It means trying to feel what another person feels." One alien snorted. "Why should a ruler feel what a servant feels?" Ethan smiled patiently. "Because when you understand pain, you stop creating it." The court laughed again, but Princess Arya, seated quietly at the back, watched with shining eyes. Ethan continued calmly. He told them stories about humans who shared food with strangers, who risked their lives for others, who chose peace over war. The aliens mocked his examples at first, but some listened in silence, their expressions softening. Day after day, he returned. He taught them words like hope, forgive, and unity. He made them write small human proverbs in their strange glowing script. Even the palace guards began to pause near the doors, pretending to patrol while secretly listening. But not everyone was pleased. General Varnak, the Queen's war chief, watched from the shadows with anger. "The Queen is losing her mind," he whispered to his soldiers. "A human teaching our leaders? This is an insult," he clenched his claws. "We will end this foolishness soon." One evening, after another long lesson, Ethan was walking back to his chamber when Queen Seraphina appeared in the corridor. Her face was unreadable. "You speak well, human," she said. "My people are unsettled. Some think I am weak for allowing this." Ethan nodded. "Change always feels like weakness at first. But real strength is choosing what is right, even when it's unpopular." For a moment, the Queen said nothing. Then she asked quietly, "And what if I told you that your lessons have made me question everything I've built?" Ethan smiled softly. "Then it means they're working." She looked away, hiding the faintest hint of a smile. "You are a strange creature, Ethan of Earth. And you, Your Majesty," he said gently, "are braver than you think." That night in the Hall of Knowledge, Princess Arya stood before her mother's advisors. "My teacher says kindness is not weakness," she said in perfect English. "It is a bridge." Even the proudest nobles were silent. The Queen's golden eyes widened slightly. For the first time, her daughter spoke the human language with grace and power. But outside the palace, under the dark twin moons, General Varnak gathered his troops. "The Queen is blinded by this human's lies," he growled. "Tomorrow, we remind her what true power looks like." As the alien soldiers prepared their weapons, Ethan looked out of his window, unaware of the storm coming. He felt peace, believing hearts were changing. But in the shadows, war was already moving toward him. The stars above Xylaris Prime shone bright and cold. The royal palace gleamed like a jewel in the darkness, unaware that danger crept closer with every heartbeat. Inside, Ethan continued his quiet mission. teaching lessons of peace to those who once saw him as lesser. He had become more than a janitor now. He was a symbol of something new, something fragile, trust. But in the hidden war halls below, General Varnak sharpened his claws on a blade of black metal. His eyes burned with fury. "The Queen has forgotten her strength," he growled to his soldiers. "She listens to a human. Tonight we take back our pride. By dawn the throne will be mine." The soldiers saluted in silence. Outside the windows, dark ships began to move, silent as shadows ready to strike. That night, Ethan was teaching in the Hall of Knowledge. A small group of alien scholars sat before him repeating human words. "Compassion," Ethan said gently. "It means to care about others, even your enemies." The aliens struggled to pronounce it, but one young guard smiled faintly. "Strange word." "But beautiful," he said. Ethan smiled back. "Beautiful things are often strange." Then the lights flickered. The hum of the palace power system trembled. The guards looked around nervously. A voice crackled through the communication crystal, panicked and loud. "Emergency alert. Enemy forces breaching the south gates. Protect the Queen." Ethan froze. "What's happening?" The guards drew their weapons. "Treason," one hissed. "It's Varnak." Before Ethan could speak, the walls shook. Explosions thundered through the palace. The glass dome above the courtyard shattered, raining shards of light. Queen Seraphina stood on her balcony, her golden eyes filled with fire. "Seal the lower halls," she commanded. "Protect my daughter." But Arya broke free from her attendants and ran toward the Hall of Knowledge. "Mr. Ethan," she cried, her small feet echoing against the marble floor. When Ethan saw her, he ran forward. "Arya, no. It's not safe." A blast rocked the corridor, throwing them both to the ground. Smoke filled the air. The sound of laser fire and alien screams echoed through the halls. Through the smoke, General Varnak appeared. Tall, armored, his blade glowing with red energy. His voice boomed like thunder. "The Queen's pet human," he sneered. "You poisoned her mind with weakness." Ethan stood protectively in front of Arya. "You call kindness weakness. That's why you'll never understand real strength," Varnak roared and swung his blade. Ethan barely dodged, pulling Arya behind a fallen pillar. He wasn't a soldier, but years of hard labor had made him fast and strong. He grabbed a fallen guard's energy staff. "Go," he whispered to Arya. "Find your mother." Tears welled in her eyes.
"Not without you!"
Another explosion shook the walls. Ethan turned, swinging the staff to block Varnak's next strike. The weapons clashed with a blinding flash. "Sparks flew. You think you can fight me, human?" Varnak mocked. "You are nothing." Ethan gritted his teeth. "I'm not fighting for me. I'm fighting for her." He struck again and again, forcing Varnak backward. But the general was stronger. With one swift move, he sent Ethan crashing into a column. Varnak raised his blade to strike, but a voice shouted, "Stop!" Queen Seraphina entered the hall, her armor shining under the broken lights. Her eyes burned with fury and grief. "Varnak," she said coldly, "you have betrayed your queen." He laughed darkly. "No, my queen, you betrayed our people, son, for him." Ethan struggled to his feet. "He'll kill you, your majesty. Take Arya and go." But the queen didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward. "Ethan, you said compassion makes us strong. Let's prove it." She turned to Varnak. "You could have served with honor. Instead, you chose fear." He roared and charged. The queen raised her hand, energy bursting from her gauntlet. The two forces collided, shaking the hall. Ethan saw Arya trapped under debris. Without thinking, he dove across the floor, pulling her free just as the ceiling collapsed. When the smoke cleared, Varnak lay defeated, thrown by the queen's power into the shattered wall. His armor sparked, his voice fading. "You've doomed us and all." Then he was silent. The queen turned, breathing heavily. She looked at Ethan, bleeding but alive, holding Arya in his arms. "You risked your life. For my daughter," she said softly. Ethan smiled weakly. "That's what humans do, your majesty. We protect what matters." Seraphina's gaze softened. "Then maybe humanity's strength is not in weapons, but in heart." Arya clung to Ethan's arm. "Mother, he saved me." The queen nodded slowly. "Yes, he did. And now the galaxy must know it." Outside, the fires of battle began to fade. The dawn rose over Xylaris Prime, painting the broken palace in gold. Ethan looked toward the light, unaware that his courage had just rewritten history. uniting two worlds through the simple power of a human heart. The twin suns of Xylaris Prime rose slowly over a wounded sky. The palace stood half-ruined but still alive, its golden spires glowing faintly under the light. Smoke drifted through the air, carrying the scent of fire and victory. The rebellion was over. Inside the great hall, silence ruled. The banners of war were torn, the walls cracked. Yet in that silence stood three figures who had changed everything. Queen Seraphina, her daughter Princess Arya, and the human who had risked everything for them, Ethan Cole. Ethan sat on the steps of the broken throne, his uniform torn, his arms wrapped in makeshift bandages. He was exhausted but alive. Across from him, Arya sat quietly, holding his hand like she never wanted to let go. When the great doors opened, hundreds of aliens entered, guards, nobles, and soldiers. They bowed low before their queen, waiting for her words. Everyone expected anger, punishment, revenge. But Seraphina's expression was unreadable. Her golden eyes swept over the crowd, then turned to Ethan. "This man," she said slowly, her voice echoing across the ruined hall, "was a servant, a janitor, a human from a world our people have long called weak." Whispers rippled through the crowd. She continued, "Yet while our own kind raised weapons against us, he raised courage. While traitors plotted destruction, he chose to protect life, even the life of a queen who once saw him as nothing." Her voice trembled slightly. "And that changed everything." Ethan tried to stand, but she gestured for him to stay. Then, in front of the entire court, the mighty Queen of Xylaris knelt before a human. The hall gasped. "From this day forth," she declared, "no human shall be called lesser within my empire. Their strength lies not in their weapons, but in their hearts. Ethan Cole of Earth, you have taught us what it means to be noble." Ethan's throat tightened. He had never seen anything like this, an alien queen kneeling to him. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "you don't have to do this." Seraphina smiled faintly. "I must. Because the galaxy is watching, and it must learn as I have. Kindness is not weakness." She stood tall again and turned to her people. "A new law shall be written. Humans will walk among us not as servants, but as allies. The wars between our worlds end today." The crowd erupted, some in disbelief, others in tears. But Princess Arya stepped forward, her voice soft yet strong. "My teacher said bridges are built with understanding. Today we build the first one." Ethan looked at her proudly. "You've learned well, Princess," she smiled. "Because I had the best teacher." Days passed. The fires were extinguished, the palace repaired. Humans and aliens began working side by side. The first time in history, the people of two worlds shared meals, laughter, and stories instead of fear. Ethan found himself invited to stay as the royal advisor, though he still liked cleaning his own small room, saying it helped him think. The queen would sometimes visit him late at night, not as a ruler but as a friend. One evening she found him on the balcony, looking at the stars. "Do you miss your home?" she asked softly. "Every day," he said. "But sometimes home isn't where you were born. It's where people finally see you for who you are." The queen smiled. "Then I hope you'll call Xylaris home too." He nodded, eyes glimmering under the twin suns. "Maybe I already do." When the peace treaty was signed between humans and the Xylari Empire, billions watched across the galaxy. On the stage stood Queen Seraphina, Princess Arya, and the human janitor who had changed the universe without ever firing a single shot. Reporters called him the teacher who united the stars. But Ethan didn't care about titles. He only cared about the little princess who now spoke perfect English, the queen who had learned to smile again, and the hope that somewhere, his son on the human colony might look up at the sky and know his father had made a difference. As the ceremony ended, the queen raised her hand toward the twin suns and said, "Let this day remind all species, the smallest act of kindness can change the course of history." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing across the skies. And in that moment, Ethan Cole, once just a human janitor, stood quietly, watching two worlds rise together. The galaxy would never be the same again.